As Bitcoiners are going to slap themselves next quarter when they find out Tesla dumped the rest of their Bitcoin holdings. With the amount of hate Elon is getting, I wouldn't blame him. And then he responds with a simple "indeed." And so that sent the crypto world into a frenzy. Bitcoin dropped as much as 10% just today after already falling about 30 to 35% from its highs. And so it's been quite a wild ride. Dogecoin fell, Ethereum, your beloved Ethereum fell off. It went all the way up to, I think, around 3,300. So it wasn't just that, though. Elon continued to respond into this whole situation. He came out and basically said that Bitcoin is actually highly centralized, with a supermajority controlled by a handful of big mining companies. A single coal mine in Xinjiang, China, flooded, almost killing the miners, and Bitcoin hash rate dropped 35%. So the hash rate, if you guys aren't aware, is basically the speed in which Bitcoin is mined. And so that dropped 35% after this coal mine went down, which is pretty crazy. So he says, does that sound decentralized to you? Basically kind of making another dig at Bitcoin. Then comes in and says, hey, cryptocurrency experts, ever heard of PayPal, which we all know he's the co-founder of? It's possible, maybe, that I know more than you realize about how money works.
Throwing shade.
And so he's just like real pissed about people like doubting him and giving him a bunch of shit. And, and we talked about this on Thursday, and I was kind of like, this seems kind of flip-floppy from Elon. Like, basically, we're going to go all in on this. We're going to buy a bunch of it up. We're going to sell Teslas with it. And then he starts backpedaling, and now it's like he's turned a complete 180. And I think a lot of it's because of the response that he was given, in the middle of the week last week.
How funny is it, that last tweet, hey, crypto experts, ever heard of PayPal? It's possible, maybe, that I know more than you realize about how money works. That's shout out to Don Fran. He's in the house. That sounds like something Don Fran would say.
It does sound like something Don Fran would say.
It's possible, maybe, I know a little bit more than you guys.
The sarcasm.
You're horrible. You guys are idiots.
It's pretty hilarious.
Tell me I'm lying, Don Fran. So anyways, all right, ask me a question.
I mean, where do you think this goes? Like, what is your thoughts on this whole thing? Especially because I kind of just told you about it.
Yeah.
And we were going to talk about the crypto drop anyway, and then this all happened. So I just want to get your thoughts on where do we go from here? Is Elon bluffing? Like, is this bullshit? Or, could we see Bitcoin removed from their balance sheets next quarter?
Oh, no, you can't. You won't. Can you? Yes. Will you? I highly doubt that. I liken it to like when you're in a relationship and the other person is just riding you and won't stop, and then you're finally like, you know what? You're right. Yep.
Yeah.
Like when he says indeed, that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
I'm not going to even argue with you because it's just ridiculous to even have this conversation. It's futile to have this conversation with you. So I think he was in that point where it's like, why am I even explaining myself to you? Because here's the other thing, and we've experienced this, not that we're trying to compare ourselves to Elon Musk, but we've experienced this. It's easy to acknowledge the negative comments, the troll comments. And when people realize that you acknowledge the outlandish comments, they begin to make outlandish comments.
Yeah.
And I think that person saying originally it's going to be removed from the balance sheet, I think that was just like an overstatement to get a reaction. I don't know if anybody like who owns Tesla truly believes that. Anybody who really like knows, has been following along, really believes that. Could he sell more? Sure. That's more likely that he could sell more. I still don't think that will happen, but selling all of it off, it just seems very unlikely that he'll do that. But it's like we deal with, like we have to consciously tell ourselves, you know what? A lot of people are saying good things, and we almost like overlook them sometimes because it's easy to get caught up on outlandish things. And I think that's the problem Elon has fallen into, is he's caught up in the outlandish. And so now people are realizing I have to say something outlandish to move it. But it is sad, as far as crypto as a whole is concerned, that a tweet does move it this way, and that people's decisions are predicated on a tweet that really doesn't have any substance.
Well, this has gotten him in trouble before. I mean, this type of, I guess, just vague type of response, I think, is something that's also, something to, I guess, I don't want to say pick apart, but there's also this other side of it, right? Because there's the Tesla side. And if he's coming out here and giving this vague response, then you're, subjecting yourself to potential trouble with the SEC again, basically coming out on social media talking about how, Bitcoin, a huge part of your huge asset that's sitting in your balance sheet, and you're not, putting it out there like you're supposed to. According to SEC guidelines, you need to put it out in a 8K at least before you just start spouting off on social media. This is the other side of it too. It's not just about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Obviously, he's had a lot of influence on that, but then there's Tesla as well. Tesla shareholders probably will have a rocky Monday, I would imagine, as a result of this.
Yeah, that's an interesting point as well. It may be a bumpy ride. I think. It's a side note that you're not really asking the question, but it begs to sort of point out as we move forward as a new way for CEOs to operate, where you look at Dave Portnoy, Elon Musk, they're very active social presences, that there's good and bad with it, but I think it's fair to say that it's overwhelmingly good. Chamath, another example. I think the pros outweigh the cons, but these are the things that could happen that could hurt you. But I think the antiquated system that the SEC is under, I think that probably needs to be evaluated for what somebody says in a tweet and doesn't say a tweet, because it's clear that I don't think Elon is trying to troll or trying to do anything other than express his frustration, because a lot of people have been beating him down, essentially saying that he's full of shit for his Bitcoin comments and how it needs to be more sustainable energy before he moves in. Pompliano was one we talked about, who basically called him out and said he was wrong. But a lot of people were...
Jack Dorsey did too. He basically was, they have Square, who has over 8,000 Bitcoin tokens, basically came out and said that, I had this pulled up, it was actually a quote, it says, Bitcoin changes everything for the better, and we will forever work to make Bitcoin better. And this is immediately after Elon came out with the news about not selling Teslas via Bitcoin. And so there's this, I guess, massive response to Elon kind of backpedaling a little bit has brought some... I guess not so nice comments and opinions from some big names out in mainstream media.
You know what's interesting? I remember if you go back to like the 80s, I would say 80s and prior, maybe digged into the 90s, where corporate social responsibility did not exist, and companies would have like plants that would contaminate like lakes, right? And they didn't care about society. They didn't care about the environment. They just cared about profitability. And it wasn't till essentially the government stepped in, started regulating them, until CSR, corporate social responsibility, became a thing. It wasn't because they wanted to out of the goodness of their heart. It's because they were forced to.
Right.
This feels the same way.
It's a really great point.
Where I get Bitcoin changes things for the better, and I would venture to say that Elon agrees with that. But I love what Elon's doing, and I want this to be on record because I do really like where he's going, because I think the point I made last week was the rate of growth is alarming as far as the rate of energy usage to mine. We looked at a course of like 3 months. The rate of growth, if that sustains, these people, these miners and the people that are investing in Bitcoin aren't going to say, hey, no, we're not going to buy until you address the wattage issue, right?
Right.
The regulators have to step in. And I think it's really cool what Elon's doing, where he's being proactive. And I'm sure this isn't him. I'm sure this actually was probably the board had sort of said something like, listen, we're a sustainable company. We're about clean energy, all this other stuff. But yeah, we're buying Bitcoin. And so energy has always been an issue for crypto. I know they're going to address that in the future, but by having somebody like Tesla take a stand, it's going to expedite the process. And I love it because it's self-regulating, so the government doesn't have to step in. And I hope they address it, rather than somebody like Jack Dorsey saying it's going to change for the better. No, Jack Dorsey should say, no, the energy consumption is alarming. Let's find solutions. That's all you have to do.